and welcome to Tutorial Tuesday. In this episode, we will be building a computer from scratch. So why would you even want to build a computer from scratch? It may come as a surprise, but part for part, prices are actually comparable to a pre-built PC. If you do a little research, you can get parts that are much better quality than what you typically find in a pre-built computer. With picking your own components, you get to decide exactly what parts and features you want, without being charged for parts or features you don't need. How do you even know what parts to buy? There are a lot of sites with build guides, and here are a few I'd like to highlight. Tech Guided keeps a current list of builds at different price points ranging from $300 to $800. Here's a breakdown, along with a list of parts and links to purchase them. XDA Developers has multiple guides as well. This is their entry-level guide that currently costs around $700. They list specific parts with prices and a brief description. The Build a PC subreddit is a fantastic community to ask questions about which parts to buy, help with putting it all together, and everything in between. My favorite site for PC build guides is PC Part Picker. I'd like to highlight the budget build, as this will be the cheapest and best way to get your foot in the door of building your own. They have an incredible tool called System Builder that helps you pick and choose parts. The first component they list is the CPU, and that's a great place to start. You'll see in the highlighted box there is something called a Compatibility Filter, and you'll want to make sure that is checked. This will help by only showing you components that are compatible with the CPU that you choose, which is why choosing it first is ideal. You'll see filters on the left-hand side to help narrow down your choices. You can choose up to 4 parts at a time and click Compare Selected for an easy-to-read side-by-side comparison. When you've made your decision, click Add. Now you're ready to choose your next component. I went ahead and pre-selected most components, but one thing I want to suggest is choosing a video card. You may not buy one initially, but in the event you decide to buy one later, you want to make sure your power supply is capable enough. So let's just pretend you're going to get a high-end video card like a RTX 3070 and click Add. Now when you click Add a power supply, it'll give you an estimated wattage for the whole system, including the video card. I would encourage you to look up specific recommendations for power supply wattage from the video card manufacturer's website, because the estimated wattage shown here is a little low in my opinion. Then I would use that recommendation to narrow down your choices. They have links to peripherals you might need like keyboards, mice, speakers, headphones, and webcams. On the right, you'll see who has the lowest price with links to purchase each component. And don't forget to use the promo and discount codes when you purchase them. You'll want to look over the potential issues and incompatibilities and adjust if necessary. There is a note here about one of the USB ports not working on the case, but that's fine, the system will still function without it. Here's a list of computer parts we will be going over in this tutorial. Case, motherboard, CPU, RAM, GPU, storage, case fans, and power supply. Before you get started, you'll want to make sure you have different sized Phillips head screwdrivers, preferably magnetic. A large open table with lots of room to place all your parts close by, a good light source. I find that a headlamp comes in handy. A cup for your loose screws, preferably magnetic. And I would not recommend building on carpet or in fuzzy socks, as static electricity can build up and ruin your parts. We'll start by taking the case screws off for the side panel. If yours is tempered glass, be very careful as it might shatter if you drop it too hard. The first thing I would do is add a case fan to the front. It comes with one fan in the rear already installed, but if you add a fan in the front, it will bring in cool air and exhaust the hot air out the rear. Just make sure the orientation is correct for proper airflow. Now we have the motherboard. You will notice that there are holes along the edges and some in the middle. These will match up with holes in the case. You'll need to lay the motherboard down on top of these holes to see exactly where to place your standoff screws. This ensures that the motherboard does not touch the case and cause it to short circuit. When installing the standoff screw, be sure not to over-tighten it as it can break inside of the case. Now install the I/O shield. Hold it up to your motherboard to make sure the orientation is correct. It just snaps into place, no screws. Now you are ready to place the motherboard on top of your standoff screws. It also may be tricky to hold the motherboard with one hand while putting in a screw with the other hand, so just be patient. This case came with a motherboard standoff that is not a screw but more of a placeholder to help with this, but not all cases come with one. Now you may begin putting the screws into the standoff screws to secure the motherboard. Again, there is no need to over-tighten these. Now you're ready to install the CPU or processor. Carefully take all the pieces out of the box. I have a processor as well as the heatsink fan. Release the latch to the CPU socket. Then carefully remove the processor from the package. Be sure not to touch the bottom so that you don't get the contact pins dirty. Here are grooves on the bottom left and bottom right side of the processor die. These will match up with notches on the CPU socket to help ensure the orientation is correct. Place it on top and close the lid and secure the latch. Now you will install the heatsink fan. The fan connector may need to come out to allow it to reach its proper place on the motherboard. Place the heatsink fan on top of the CPU and align the push pins with the holes on the motherboard. Then push the pins down until you hear a click, which means it is secured. Connect the 4-pin fan connector to the spot on the motherboard labeled CPU fan. Next up, we have the RAM or memory to install. These also have a groove in the middle to help get the orientation correct. One side is longer than the other, so make sure it's the right way before you install. In this case, I have 2 sticks of RAM and they will go into the same color slots. This is called dual channel memory. Place them in the RAM slots and push down on each end until you hear it click in place. Now it's time to install the storage. Here I have a PCI Express SSD. You'll need to remove the screw that holds it in place and set it to the side. Slide the drive into the slot, making sure you pay attention to the notch. The side with stickers on it is what usually faces up. Once it is installed, it will be raised up at an angle, and this is normal. Press it down and put the screw back in to secure it. If you need to install a 2.5-inch SSD, it will go here. If you need to install a 3.5-inch hard drive, it will be placed here. This is the connector for the fan at the rear of the case. I'll place it through one of the holes at the top to tidy up the cables. These are the other connectors for the front of the case. They can be put through the hole in the side to come out near the bottom of the motherboard, near where they will be put in place. I have a loose connector for the rear case fan and put it on one of the fan connections on the motherboard. This is the USB connector to the front of the case. It will be installed on the right side of the motherboard. There is a notch on one side to help get the orientation correct. This is the audio connector, which will give access to the speaker port on the front of the case. You can see how one of the pins is blocked off, so match that up with the pin layout on the motherboard. These are the power, reset, and hard drive light connectors. Each set has an arrow on the back to tell the positive side, which you will use to match up to the positive markings on the motherboard. If you need to, you can pull apart these connectors to give yourself a little more wiggle room to get them adjusted properly. The power supply will go on the bottom of this case. It comes with 4 screws to hold it in. The bottom of this power supply has a fan that you will want to put facing the bottom of the case, as there are holes in the bottom to allow cool air to come in. After setting it in, use the 4 screws to secure it. Now you need to separate the cables that you're going to use from the ones that you won't. All the ones that you will not use, bundle them together to keep them out of the way. We have the 24-pin connector, 8-pin CPU connector, and 6 or 8-pin video card connector. If you have a 2.5 or 3.5-inch hard drive, you will also need those power connectors. Then you can start to move them through the holes of the case near where they will be installed. Start with the 24-pin connector that's going through the topmost slot on the side. Next, the CPU connectors will go at the very top of the motherboard, followed by the video card connectors, which can go through the side near the middle. Now you can tuck away the bundle of unused cables. Now that these cables are pushed through, we can install them. The 8-pin CPU connector can be tricky because sometimes it is split into a 4x4 configuration. If they are split, they can be placed together before you install. The 24-pin connector sometimes has the same split. You have to slide the 4-pin piece onto the 20-pin to make sure they form one continuous 24 block. Push it into place until you hear it click. Now it's time to install the video card. The side of the video card with the outputs goes to the rear of the case. You will need to hover the video card over the motherboard to see how many slot covers to remove from the rear of the case. In this example, I need to remove 2 slot covers. Now you are ready to place the video card into the PCI Express slot. Make sure the retention clip is pushed down in the open position and apply just enough force until the video card clicks. I had an issue getting the video card installed with the USB cable in the way. It's okay to remove this to be able to install the video card first, then plug it back in later. Typically the video card goes into the topmost PCI Express slot. Now put screws on the video card on the rear of the case. Plug the power cables in from the power supply to the video card. Your plugs might have the same split as the others. Some video cards have 8 pins and some only have 6. You can move the split pins to the side to accommodate for the correct size for your video card. Assuming everything is hooked up and in place, you are now ready to place the first side panel back on, which slides on and screws into place. The other side panel is ready to be installed as well. I also have a front cover to the case, which just snaps back on. And now your build is complete.